introduce our speaker this morning, which is Bob McCabe, and he's accompanied by his entourage.
We heard you were a rough crowd.
That's right. Captain Joe Brown and Karen Hopkins from their own, they have their own public relations person along with them. So in any event, Sheriff McCabe is a lifelong native of Norfolk, and who has come up through the school system in Norfolk, served in the Navy, and obtained a master's in public administration, and then also after the Navy worked his way up through the Norfolk Police Department, and then decided to do some things with the Sheriff's Department, and ran and successfully won his election to the Sheriff's Department, and is now the sheriff there, and has been on the job for over 20 years. So at this point, without reading all of the interesting things here that are listed, he's going to tell us about the things that he does with Norfolk Sheriff's Department and their work with the community. One of which is, interestingly, dovetails in with one of our members in the Girl Scouts, and I think he'll maybe speak a little bit about that, but many other things that he does with Norfolk and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Before I get started, $5, because it's the biggest bill I have, but not just for speaking, but since I have the father here. When I was in 7th grade, I was an altar boy, and I was removed with another altar boy because we got caught doing some things we weren't supposed to do. When we were putting the things back into the sacristy from church. So I don't know who collects the money, but
Are you looking for absolution?
I know that's probably worth a lot more than $5. It's really a pleasure to be here. I mean, it's great to have so much energy in the room first thing in the morning. I'm going to kind of focus on our community programs that we do. For those who've been around for a long time, when I got elected, I came from the police department, and I used to drive down Shore Drive, and I used to see Sheriff Drew's workforce and inmates working on Shore Drive and cleaning up, and I used to always go, I don't know why we don't do that in Norfolk. We got the biggest jail around. And so reading stuff in the newspaper, you know, about, we had, I think, 15 deaths in 3 years and a bunch of other stuff going on. So that's what kind of caused me to leave the police department and run. And Sheriff Newhart in Chesapeake and Sheriff Drew in Virginia Beach really kind of took me under their wing, because when it comes to parties, and I don't even know why sheriffs, when they get elected, you know, are Republican or Democrat. It's just, I guess, the way it's been. But the 5 constitutional offices are sheriff, Commonwealth attorney, treasurer, commissioner of revenue, and clerk of circuit court. And why in the world? I know this has been a bill for about 5 or 6 times in the last 20 years has gone to try and change it to nonpartisan like city councils, and it never gets out of committee because there's certain, I guess, folks who want to have that designation depending on what locality they live in. But when it comes to, I can't even remember what party I was. I think I was elected a Republican 21 years ago. I've been elected an independent. I've been elected a Democrat, because it's very difficult to survive as an independent when you're in a metropolitan city. But politics doesn't matter. I think Sheriff Drew was a Democrat, and I think John was a Republican, or vice versa. I can't remember. But the point is, it doesn't matter. And so they kind of took me under their wing, and it was just unbelievable, the programs that Sheriff Newhart started out in Chesapeake with his senior programs and things like that. So I was told by them, it's highly permissible to steal any good ideas from sheriffs. They don't mind. And so what I've tried to do over the last 20 years is any programs we can that really work in the community, you know, we'll steal them. And we've had other people steal ideas from us, and they'll call them and go, hey, do you mind? Absolutely not. We'll send you whatever, because you know, that's what really sheriffs are all about. and I think we're really blessed, especially in Virginia, because if you go other places around the country, the sheriffs and the police chiefs are butting heads and fighting. And it happens every now and then in Virginia, but not very often. So that's how I kind of focus on the community side in Norfolk. And I've been looking probably for about 10, 12 years for a place to have a summer camp, because I read these sheriff magazines, and sheriffs in Texas and Florida and Arizona and places where the weather's kind of nice all year round, they have all year round summer camps. And they're all free to kids, and from running their own petting zoos to just running, camps all year round. Of course, we couldn't do that here, but it took me, and I'm looking all over, there's no place in Norfolk to do that. And we approached the Girl Scouts of the Colonial Coast. And Andy Protegero, who's a councilman in Norfolk, is a member of Sertoma. And Sertoma partnered with the Girl Scouts, and so kind of put us together several years ago. And so a place where when I was in Canine on the police department, on night shift, we usually would drive all the way in the back of the cemetery at Forest Lawn, so you can kind of give your dog a break and not have to worry about them biting anybody. You don't have to watch them and take them off the leash. Well, this camp of Paces has been there for God knows how long. I never knew it was there. And when that kind of came to my attention, I took my dog back there for 4 years when I was in Canine, and we didn't even know it was back there. But it's really a nice, big piece of property. So we partnered with the Girl Scouts, and this is our 3rd year of providing 5 one-week summer camps, and they're all free. And let me digress for a second. Sheriff Drew and Sheriff Norris said, look, you're going to be hitting up for donations and contributions. So, it's going to either come out of your own pocket or your campaign. Why don't you start a foundation? Because we have. So I started a foundation like 15, 16 years ago. It's a small one. We, about $15,000, $16,000 a year is about all we raise. But that's what pays for the summer camps. We do scholarships to the 5 public high schools in Norfolk. We get 5 names from each of the high schools, and then we have a committee that picks from those. And that's nice to be able to do. We help pay for back-to-school uniforms for elementary and middle school. And again, this is just little stuff, but it's kind of a way for us to contribute. For the past 12 years, we've had a sports camp. And the idea I came up with a sports camp, it was actually a football camp. Norfolk was the only school district in Hampton Roads that didn't have a middle school football program. And so we targeted that age of 10 to 14 to kind of keep them busy for a week during the summer, and hopefully they're getting in other programs. And because of that, Norfolk kind of picked up on the middle school football, so now they're doing middle school. And I focused on those, just like our summer camp, because my last assignment on the police department before I left to run for sheriff was I was in the youth bureau, and I was in charge of the truancy and the runaways. And the youth bureau was combined with sexual assault, so dealt a lot with crimes against children, and then the youth and the runaways. And if kids, especially that age, are idly by when school's out, they tend to kind of get into mischief. And that's why a lot of things happen when school's not in session, because school is kind of a pretty good, I don't want to say babysitter, but it keeps their attention, so at least they have to be somewhere during the day for a certain amount of time. So we targeted that 10 to 14 age, and this is our 3rd year of doing the summer camps, and we do 5 one-week sessions, and it's arts and crafts, canoeing, archery, things that these kids would never have the opportunity to do. And we open it up to all Norfolk kids. And we partnered with the schools. They provide free transportation. They also provide free lunches because it's part of their federal grant. And so we have our community affairs division works with them, but we have a multitude of volunteers of our deputies that, when on their days off and so forth, come out there and volunteer. And we also have partnered, this is the first year with the Navy. The Navy sent over 6 volunteers from the Portsmouth Naval Hospital. We have volunteers from Norfolk State University, from Old Dominion University, and these are just people who are just giving back. And so we actually wind down tomorrow, or today is the last day of the camp. And during that 1 week, they get all this stuff, but they also get canine demonstrations. Didn't mean to bring that up. But I got 68 stitches in my leg. The first day I got transferred to canine, I was a decoy. You know how they see the suit they put on? Well, the dog got underneath my first day in canine. I got 68 stitches in my leg, and everybody thought I was going to transfer and go back, but I stayed out there, so it's not fun for sure. We have canine demonstrations. The fire department comes out. We have what we call Virginia Rules, which is a civic program that we do in the schools. And it teaches the young folks the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor. What are the consequences if you get a misdemeanor or a felony, and what that can mean to you. We have personal hygiene classes. Anything that, would benefit these folks. We do the arts and crafts. This week we started a pastor who happens to own a barbershop at the West Ocean View Shopping Center came up to me, and I can't remember where, a few weeks ago, and said, look, I think it's great what you're doing. I would love to be able to provide free haircuts to any of your campers that want a free haircut. And so yesterday, we checked with the parents, make sure it's okay, and we shuttled yesterday kids up to the West Ocean View Shopping Center to get haircuts. And it's that outpouring of support that is really kind of neat. And so I can't thank the Girls Club enough for partnering with us. And what we do to try and partner to show some, we can use, by law, you can use inmate labor on any city, state, or federally owned, leased, or owned property. Well, that's owned by the city of Norfolk, but it's leased to the Girl Scouts. And so we bring our crews out, and we cut the grass, and we do a bunch of landscaping. And this year, I guess it was earlier this year, they had a big leak in the roof, and so we helped replace the roof, the floor, and we have some talented people. 80% of the urinals in the new Harbor Park were put in by inmate labor. And most of these guys are in there for not paying child support. The ones you see out in the community in the orange jumpsuits, and somebody said, well, how do they pay the child support if they're in jail? Well, here's what's kind of neat. We went to the judges when I got elected and said, look, if we have people work out in the community and they're just sitting in jail, can you give them credit towards their fines and costs? And what happens is somebody gets 30 days in jail and a $250 fine. Well, they don't have a job, so they don't make the payments like they're supposed to. A judge issues what they call a show cause order, which means go arrest the person, bring them before me, and show cause why I shouldn't hold you in contempt because you haven't been making the payments that you have. And 10 out of 10 times they go, I don't have a job. Well, after about 3 or 4 times of that, they go, okay, got a job for you. They put them in jail. So what they do is they work off fines and costs at minimum wage. And we started with Harbor Park years ago as a training place for these folks. And again, most of these they're either, say, 80%, 90% child support, or first offense shoplifting or stuff like that. Very minor stuff. They have more to lose than anything if they screw up. So what we found out after probably 2 or 3 years, the skill set of power washing peanuts and stuff like that, it just doesn't happen. There's actually a mechanism and a skill set. It is the same skill set as it takes to do sandblasting in a ship. Who would have thunk that? Father, who would have thunk that? So we actually have, the shipyard has employed these nonviolent guys once they get out. Now, they go over there and do that, work their fines. They don't get paid yet, but because they have to demonstrate, you can't make them work. They have to get up and go to work and not stay in their bunk, not call in sick. And so once they've demonstrated that for 3-4 weeks, then we get them paying jobs. And that's how it kind of works. We have them working at Scope. We have them working at Harbor Park. And again, they get fines and costs taken off. At Waterside, up until last year, for 5 years, they had a cleaning crew at night that cleaned up Waterside. Saved the city $86,000 a year. If anybody's played golf at the Ocean View Golf Course, the new fence that was put up half a dozen years ago was put up with inmate labor. It saved the city about $95,000, what I was told. And they have one person that is out there supervising them, from the city, to make sure it's being put up right. And so, you know, it's a wonderful program because it's a win-win. And a lot of these folks, they're never going to pay their fines. So at least the community gets something out of it. We clean up after all the TGIF concerts. We clean up the parking lots. At the ODU football games, we use weekenders. These are your bad drivers. Could be any one of us in here that just has a problem differentiating the colors from yellow to red. And I'm not talking about Colonel Hilders at all. I'm not going to mention it. But, or, you know, they kind of step on that pedal on the right and more pressure, it kind of goes, and they go in front of a judge and they keep getting tickets after ticket after ticket. You can get a weekend in jail on some things, especially if you're 20 miles over the speed limit, it's considered reckless driving. But if you're a habitual, a judge will try to get your attention and put you, well, we went to the judges again after I got elected and said, you know, instead of these folks spending, you know, the weekend in jail, if they volunteer, can they work in the community? They come in and check in with us on Friday afternoon, do all the paperwork, and then they go home, come back on Saturday morning, work until 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go home, come back on Sunday, boom. They said absolutely. So we've been doing a lot of our weekend stuff. We clean the beach from the Hampton Bridge Tunnel to East Beach 4 times a year, just going down the beach. We clean up in Berkeley, Campostella, the Elizabeth River, where stuff kind of goes into the rocks and you know, nobody ever picks that stuff up. We pick up the on-ramps and off-ramps of the interstate in Norfolk. And so we're doing all these things, and at ODU, we're cleaning up after the football games. They're doing the stadium, power wash and so forth, but they also pick up all the neighborhoods when you have those tailgate parties and so forth. And then we actually have the Civic League presidents come out and sign off to make sure everything's good, because, you know, when you started football several years ago, you know, there's a lot of things that can kind of, you know, go negatively wrong with it. One of the people who was actually cleaning up on a Saturday was a guy named, Marcus Vick. Not Michael, but Marcus Vick.
Oh, wow.
His brother, who played for Virginia Tech and went on to play with Miami, and had some issues with behavior. And when he got arrested, because he brandished a firearm on Granby Street, got arrested, got probation, violated probation, gets arrested. Well, whenever a high-profile person comes in, I always get notified, or you know, any type of, I don't want to say regular type person that gets arrested. So when I got notified, you know, we put them in an individual cell. Anybody we put in, any child molesters, anybody who's on the news and is high profile, because the inmates can see the news and they get the basic channels, then, you know, we want to, you know, our main job is to make sure people's rights are protected, their civil rights, until they go to court. They don't have any expectation of privacy or anything like that, but our job is to protect them no matter what they got charged with. And so he had the ability, if he wanted to, the judge gave him the opportunity to do weekends. Well, he didn't want to do weekends. So Michael Vick called somebody he knows down here to see if he could kind of be able to talk to him. And he actually talked his brother into stop being a knucklehead and getting out there and working, because he wasn't going out there and work. It was going to be beneath him. But, you know, instead of sitting in a cell, it took him 24 hours in a single cell. He said, I need to get out of here. So he started cleaning up, and he made some comments apparently that I never thought I'd be on this side of the field. And he was one of the ones picking up trash in the, you know, in the grandstands. It's kind of a humbling experience, and I don't even know what's going on with him now. I hope he's kind of, you know, got his life, you know, changed a little bit. But that's kind of, I'm kind of covering a lot of material, but I'm real proud of the community programs. We never ever have a shortage of volunteers from our staff. Whenever we get behind anything. We just did a food drive. A friend of mine, Jenny Kavanagh, put a thing on Facebook about the food bank being short, you know, and all that. So I just said, Jenny, we'll put a thing out at the sheriff's office admin building and get food in. So, you know, my staff kind of, you know, chipped in. We had people driving up, dropping stuff off, and we just made I think 2 days ago, we went over and dropped off a delivery of a whole truckload pickup truck full of stuff that Jenny collected, you know, that people dropped off at her house. So, but whenever I say anything to my staff, I mean, I'm so blessed that they all chip in. And so, real proud of that. Yes, sir, Bob.
I just am so glad. I've always felt you know, I work with some young people and get picked up for all sorts of stuff because of child support. And I keep saying, we put them in jail, they lose their job and all this. Thank God for that, because I keep saying we need a debtor type of prison. It's exactly what you're setting up. So thank you for that, because I just
Well,
get so frustrated.
You know, Father, it makes sense, and when they get paid, we get the check.
Yeah.
And then we pay all their bills, and we make sure rent, if they have rent, that gets paid, money goes to the mom, whatever. But we also have financial institutions that come in, and as part of, I guess, their corporate volunteerism, and they teach, you know, how to do a checkbook, how to do budgeting, you know, how to, you know, when you go in for an interview. We're doing a lot of those little things, and people go, why does the sheriff's office need a PIO, a public information officer? Well, a lot of these things we do, nobody would know about, and with the advent of social media, Facebook and Twitter, and there's some things I don't even know what they're called. You know, Karen, I met Karen on it. We also have a senior program. We have over 100 seniors in our program that we check on every month. And was it 2 years ago? Last year? Last year, we had one of our seniors was turning 100 years old, still living on her own. She had a little bit of a hearing problem, but other than that, she was living on her own. Well, we went and got a cake and got some, you know, balloons and stuff. We went over there. It was raining that day. Well, we put out a thing to the media, a press release that we're doing this thing, because, you know, we want people to know what we're doing out there, and also know about the program so they can, you know, have people in it if they need to. And so Karen Hopkins was working with Channel 13, and so she comes out lugging the camera in the rain, and that's how I met her. And I was saying, and I jokingly said, you know, I got a PIO job available, because my other PIO went to the Virginia Department of Transportation. The one before that is now with Dominion Power. And does anybody remember me getting kind of taken to task for having two of them at the same time in the paper? Let me tell you how perceptions are. Benita Harris, who was working there for 5 years, she came in and she said, you know, the kids are getting older, and I'm ready for more challenges. She's been there 5 years. She's been at Channel 13 for 15 years, professional, you know, journalist. And so she's out there looking for a job. And so I had the ability to hire Paula Miller, who lives in Norfolk, was driving to the beach all the time. So I hired Paula knowing that Benita's going to get picked up any day. And so it happened to be during election year, and all of a sudden, here I am. I got, you know, it's a waste of taxpayers' money. Well, I couldn't say, well, look, Benita's actually looking for a job. And so that's because it wouldn't have been fair to her. And, you know, so that's how sometimes you get frustrated, because you can't really say what you want to say. And it doesn't matter because nobody trusts politicians anyway.
What's your number of women that you have, and what are the age groups? I mean, do you have old folks in that?
Well, we have women and men go from right now we have 3 15-year-olds that are being tried as adults for murder. But they can't be in our jail unless they're being tried as adults. And that depends on their crime and what their past record is with the criminal justice system. We are actually going to be, we have about 10 women left. We used to average about 220. And our population is way down, like most jails, and it just runs in cycles. You know, you'll go 4 or 5 years here, 4 or 5 years there. And so we're going to be an all-male jail. We're moving them all to our regional jail.
Okay.
But the one thing to remember is most of our folks, 85, 90% of our folks, the average stay is about 58 days. And then they're coming back into our communities. And that's why I'm real big on programs.
Sheriff McCabe, we got a question.
One last question. How about give us a real quick, what is the mission of the Sheriff's Department vis-a-vis the Police Department?
Great question. A lot of people don't understand the difference. Everybody started, the sheriffs came over back in the day. And so the police departments were formed by local towns or cities. The only thing that in Virginia, we are responsible for jail security, court security, and serving civil process papers. Those are our 3 things. Work release, programs, all this other stuff. Booking of prisoners, that's actually a police thing, but most of us do it because it helps, you know, keep policemen on the street. But our folks have the same powers of arrest. If I wanted to put people out there with radar guns and do radar, if I wanted to get a canine unit, we have the same powers. But most of the time when sheriffs do that and kind of intrude on the police side if they don't want you to, then that's where that power thing comes in. It doesn't happen very often, but most big cities, big counties, they have police departments. If for some reason, because of budgets or whatever, and they said, we're going to dissolve the police department, well then I, as a sheriff, would take over all those things. That's kind of an extreme thing, but that's the big difference. And a lot of people at the civic leagues, when they come into town, they don't understand the differences. If you come from Florida, you got the Broward County Sheriff's Office. You got the city of Fort Lauderdale within that county, and I still don't understand how they're able to, who's going to respond to this robbery or that bank robbery or that domestic. And I always joke those guys, how do y'all do it without kind of, y'all getting mad at each other and all. But in Virginia, there's no cities that are within the counties. They're all separate. But Prince William County, Henrico County, Fairfax County, they all have their own police departments. But if they didn't, if you go to York County, Gloucester County, they don't have police departments. So the sheriff's offices, they run the jail and they run the law enforcement on the street.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
I don't know if it impacted upon you, but this man is a Rotarian. And what I'd like to do is give you this cup, because it is obvious to me that in the things you think, in the things you say, and the things you do, that it is the truth, that it is fair to all concerned, that it will build goodwill and better friendships and be beneficial to all concerned. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. There are two things I would like to close our meeting with. First, we have the governor's visit next week. Nancy Jocelyn will be introducing District Governor Gary.